Strange thing about life. It never warns you before it flips the table. You go on thinking you've got it all figured out, that the days will keep crawling by the same way they always have. And then, out of nowhere, someone walks in. Not just anyone. Someone who tilts the ground beneath your feet. Someone who rearranges the rules you thought were carved in stone. You don't see them coming. You don't plan for it. And you sure as hell don't get to control it. But when they arrive, nothing stays the same. Change often arrives disguised as a person. You expect it to come in big explosions, in moments that shake the ground, in events that split your life into before and after. But life is smarter than that. It doesn't always send storms or disasters. Sometimes it just sends someone. An ordinary face, a casual voice, a presence that doesn't announce itself as destiny. And yet, beneath the surface, they are the earthquake you never prepared for. At first, they don't look like change. They look like another stranger, another encounter, another passing figure in the endless crowd. You might ignore them, brush them off, even underestimate their role in your life. That's the trick. Life disguises them so well that by the time you realize what they are, it's already too late. They've already shifted something inside you. A thought, a decision, a perspective you can't go back from. And it doesn't always feel like a gift. Sometimes the person who changes you breaks you first. They challenge the illusions you've built. Let's tear down the lies you've told yourself. They drag you into places you've avoided. Their presence doesn't always bring comfort. It brings friction. They irritate the comfortable parts of you. They disturb the routines you cling to. They force you to look in the mirror you've been avoiding. You don't always welcome them, but that doesn't matter. They weren't sent to be welcomed. They were sent to alter you. Other times, their impact is quiet. A sentence they speak lodges in your mind and refuses to leave. A small act they do opens your eyes to something you never considered. A look, a word, a moment. It doesn't take much. And that's the beauty of it. Change doesn't need grand gestures. It needs the right trigger, the right spark, delivered by the right person. The most dangerous part is that you never see it coming. You never wake up knowing, today I'll meet the one who will alter the trajectory of my life. No, it sneaks up on you. It hides in the mundane. You could be sitting in a coffee shop, walking down the street, scrolling through another meaningless day, and there they are, ordinary to everyone else, extraordinary only to you. And from that point on, your story bends. Decisions you thought you'd already made get rewritten. Paths you swore you'd never walk suddenly open. They pull threads you didn't know existed, and soon the entire fabric of your life starts to rearrange. You can resist it, fight it, deny it, but the shift is already in motion. Once someone becomes the catalyst, there's no undoing it. People love to think they're in control of their transformations, that they'll decide when to grow, when to change, when to become something new. But often, it isn't your choice. It's someone sent into your life to make sure you move when you refuse to. And sometimes that someone saves you. Sometimes they destroy you. Most of the time, they do both. Looking back, you'll see the pattern. The moments where life pivoted, the forks in the road, the decisions you never thought you'd make. All of them trace back to a person. A face. A presence that shifted you in a way nothing else could. They were the disguise change wore when it walked through your door. And whether you love them, hate them, or barely understand them, you'll never be able to deny what they were. Change often arrives disguised as a person. Not in thunder, not in lightning, not in earthquakes, in a hand extended, a word spoken, an eye that sees you differently than the rest. You never recognize it at the start, but in time you'll realize that was the moment everything began to move. The right person shifts your entire direction. You think you know where you're going. You draw maps in your head. You make promises to yourself about what the future will look like. But one encounter, one conversation, one presence in your life, and suddenly all those maps don't matter. That's what makes it so unsettling. You can spend years building walls around who you think you are, and one person walks in and knocks them down without even trying. They don't have to do something extraordinary. Sometimes it's not about what they give you, but what they pull out of you. A part of you that's been buried, ignored, silenced for years, suddenly comes alive in their presence. They have a way of making you feel like you've been walking in circles, and now the ground finally straightens out. And it's not that they hand you direction. It's that they awaken something inside you that was always there, waiting, but too weak to rise without a spark. The dangerous part is that it rarely feels comfortable. When the right person shifts your direction, it often feels like a collision. You don't glide into it gracefully. It's messy. You resist it. You fight against the pull because deep down you know what it means if you let them in. The life you've been clinging to will never be the same again. And that terrifies you more than staying stuck ever could. But that's the point. The right person doesn't come to reinforce your comfort zone. They come to smash it apart. They make you question the decisions you swore were final. They force you to reconsider the identity you've been hiding behind. They don't let you keep lying to yourself, because their very existence shines a light on the cracks you hoped no one would notice. Sometimes they appear as love, sometimes as a mentor, sometimes as a stranger who speaks one line that rewires your brain. It doesn't matter the form. What matters is the effect. Because once you've been shifted, you can't walk back into the old direction and pretend it fits anymore. You can't go back to sleep after being shaken awake. The road you thought was straight suddenly looks like a dead end. And the one you feared the most becomes the only one you can take. The unsettling truth is that you don't get to choose when this person arrives. You don't get to prepare for it. They arrive in the middle of your chaos, in the middle of your routines, in the middle of your carefully constructed plans. And with just their presence, they bend everything. That's why they feel like disruption. Because you were convinced you had control, and suddenly you don't. People often mistake this shift as coincidence, as chance. But it isn't. Deep down, you sense it was timed. You sense they were meant to show up exactly when they did, because if they had come too early, you wouldn't have been ready, and if they came too late, you would have been too far gone. The timing is never yours, and that's why it feels so unnerving. It feels orchestrated, almost designed, like something or someone wanted you redirected, and they were the tool chosen to do it. And it's not always gentle. The right person can hurt you as much as they heal you. They can drag you through pain, confusion, loss. They can break you down to the foundation, stripping away the lies you wrapped yourself in. But even that destruction is part of the shift. Because to move in a new direction, you often have to lose everything that chained you to the old one. Years later, when you look back, you'll trace the line of your story and you'll see the bend, the curve, the moment where everything tilted. And at that bend will be a person. Not always the person you expected, not always the person you wanted, but the one you needed. The one who changed your direction without asking for permission, without giving you warning, without letting you stay the same. They didn't just pass through your life. They rerouted it. You won't see them coming until it's too late. That's the twisted beauty of it. If you knew ahead of time, you'd try to prepare, you'd build defenses. You'd tighten your grip on the little world you've pieced together. But life doesn't give you that luxury. It doesn't knock on the door and politely announce, "Here comes the person who will change everything." No. It slips them into your story without warning, without explanation, like a knife in the dark. By the time you notice, they've already cut something open inside you. Think about it. If you saw them coming, you'd resist harder. You'd find ways to avoid them, to outsmart fate. But that's why it doesn't work that way. They show up when you're distracted, when you're busy playing out the same routines. When you've convinced yourself nothing will ever really shift. They walk in as if they're just another ordinary piece of the day, and you have no idea what's about to unfold. That's the trap. They blend in with the noise, but their effect hits like a gunshot. At first, they don't look like destiny. They look like coincidence. A chance meeting, a harmless conversation, a stranger's voice in the crowd. But the smallest detail, one word, one look, one presence, starts to gnaw at you. It lingers when everything else fades. You catch yourself replaying their words, remembering the way they stood, the way they saw you. That's how it begins. Quiet, subtle, almost innocent. And then, before you realize it, you're altered. They've shifted your thoughts, cracked your patterns, forced you into a confrontation with yourself you weren't ready for. And you can't undo it. Once the door is open, it doesn't close again. You can try to go back to your routines, but they no longer fit. You can try to erase them, but the imprint stays. That's what too late means. By the time you see their effect, it's irreversible. People love to believe they're in control, that nothing can touch them unless they allow it. But this isn't about control. This is about inevitability. The right person doesn't wait for your permission to change you. They arrive, they collide, and the impact leaves a mark you can't scrub out. That's why it feels so violent, even when it's wrapped in something as gentle as a smile. Because the violence isn't always physical. It's the tearing apart of who you thought you were. Sometimes the shift they bring is painful. Sometimes it feels like loss, like betrayal, like chaos ripping through the order you worked so hard to build. You want to hate them for it, blame them, curse the day they entered your world. But deep down, even through the pain, you know it wasn't an accident. You know there was a reason they showed up when they did, that the timing was too sharp to be random. You know you weren't meant to avoid this. You were meant to be broken open. Other times, the shift feels intoxicating. They make you see possibilities you never imagined. They awaken a hunger you didn't know you had. They turn the mundane into something unbearable, forcing you to chase something bigger, something deeper. And even in the rush of it, you realize this isn't something you can walk away from. It's already inside you. It's already too late. That's the thing about people like this. They don't need to stay forever to change you. They don't need to stick around, hold your hand, walk you through the transformation. Sometimes they enter, tilt your world, and vanish just as suddenly as they came. But the damage, or the gift, is permanent. The shift remains. Your path bends. Your story rewrites itself, with or without them in it. You won't see them coming until it's too late. And when you finally recognize who they were, you'll look back at the moment you first crossed paths and realize it wasn't random. It was the spark, the trigger, the collision that forced you to move. You'll see that by the time you noticed, the shift had already begun, and nothing could stop it. Disruption is the proof they were sent. People always think that when the right person comes into their life, it should feel soft, easy, like slipping into a dream where everything makes sense. But that's not how it works. The ones who matter most don't arrive to soothe you. They arrive to shake you, to disturb your balance, to rattle your cage, to pull apart the fragile illusion you've built around yourself. And it feels violent because it is. You mistake chaos for danger, but sometimes it's the only language that real transformation speaks. Think about it. Comfort has never forced anyone to change. It lulls you into sameness. It whispers lies that you're fine where you are. It convinces you that you don't need more. And you believe it until someone comes along who flips the table you've been eating off your whole life. That sudden disruption, that crash, that storm, they're not accidents. They're the evidence that this person isn't random. They were placed here, right here, to wake you up. The disruption they bring doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it's their presence alone that unsettles you. They see through you when others don't. They ask the question you've spent years avoiding. They laugh at the things you take so seriously. They strip away the masks you've been clinging to, and you feel exposed, almost humiliated. That's the proof. If they were meant to leave you the same, you wouldn't feel that sting. That discomfort, that unease, is the sign they've touched something real inside you. It doesn't always feel like a blessing. In fact, more often than not, it feels like an attack. You think, why them? Why now? Why couldn't I have stayed in my little bubble just a little longer? But bubbles aren't homes. They're prisons. And maybe the only way you'd ever step out is if someone came along and burst it without your permission. Disruption is cruel like that. It doesn't ask. It doesn't wait. It simply breaks, and once it's broken, you can't pretend you didn't see what was inside. The fascinating part is how you react. Some fight tooth and nail against it, trying to patch the walls, trying to tape the pieces of the bubble back together. Others deny it, pretend the disruption was meaningless, just a phase. But deep down, they know. Because once someone has rattled your soul, you can't unhear the sound of that shaking. You can ignore it, but it never goes away. It stays with you, a reminder that you were meant for more, that you were meant to move. And sometimes, the disruption looks like destruction. Maybe they force you to face a truth you've buried. Maybe they walk away and leave you hollow. Maybe they betray you in a way that cuts so deep you think you'll never recover. And yet, years later, when you piece together the story, you see it. The betrayal was the disruption you needed. The loss was the shift. The pain was the evidence that they weren't random. They were the tool life chose to break you open. Other times, disruption is disguised as love. They walk in, and suddenly nothing tastes the same. Nothing feels the same. Nothing matters the way it did yesterday. You're consumed, addicted, alive in a way that terrifies you. And you know this isn't ordinary, because ordinary never shakes you like this. Ordinary doesn't make you restless in your own skin. Ordinary doesn't flip your entire world upside down with just a glance. That's the difference. Ordinary people keep you comfortable. Sent ones don't. You can measure their impact by the size of the mess they leave behind. The confusion, the questions, the sleepless nights, the way you can't go back to who you were before they appeared. That mess is the proof. Because if they were meaningless, you'd forget them easily. You'd move on without a scar. But scars are evidence. And the deeper the scar, the louder the message. This person was sent for a reason. Disruption is the proof they were sent. Not their kindness, not their smiles, not their promises. The disruption, the chaos, the way your world suddenly tilts off its axis. That's how you know you didn't meet them by accident. You were meant to be shaken. You were meant to be undone. And that's exactly why they came. Comfort dies so transformation can live. That's the rule nobody wants to face. People cling to their comfort like it's salvation, as if staying safe, predictable, and untouched will somehow give them meaning. But comfort is a coffin dressed up as a blanket. It keeps you warm, but it also keeps you buried. Nothing grows there, nothing changes there, nothing awakens there. And when someone enters your life to shift everything, the first thing they do is suffocate that comfort. They pull it right out of your hands, and you panic. because it feels like you're being robbed. But you're not being robbed. You're being revived. Transformation never arrives politely. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. Doesn't ask if you're willing to give up the soft lies you've been living in. It barges in, rips the mask from your face, and leaves you gasping in the cold. And in that moment, it feels like death. The death of who you thought you were. The death of the little patterns that made you feel safe. The death of the identity you built to protect yourself from the truth. But only when that death happens can anything new come alive. You see, people want transformation without sacrifice. They want to evolve, but still cling to the old life that numbed them. They want to change, but without letting anything be destroyed. But destruction is the doorway. That's why the right person in your life often feels like chaos. They're not here to make you comfortable. They're here to drag you out of the grave you've mistaken for home. They kill your comfort, and you hate them for it, until you realize that nothing else could have woken you up. Sometimes it happens in love. You meet someone who makes you feel things you can't control. Suddenly, your safe routines feel unbearable. The job you tolerated, the life you settled for, the excuses you whispered to yourself, they all burn in the light of what they awaken. And it's terrifying, because you can't crawl back into your comfort after tasting what's real. Other times, it happens through pain. They hurt you, betray you, leave you shattered. But even in that destruction, you feel something stirring. The pain cracks you open in ways comfort never could. Comfort is seductive. It tells you that survival is enough. It whispers that as long as nothing hurts, you're fine. But survival isn't life. Survival is waiting to die slowly. Transformation demands more. And that's why comfort has to die first. It's the sacrifice required for growth. It's the blood price you pay for the chance to become something different. And the person who enters your life to shift everything. They are often the executioner. They kill your comfort without hesitation. And you resent them because you think they're taking from you. But they're not taking. They're clearing space. It's brutal, though. Because the death of comfort leaves you naked, exposed. You no longer have the illusions to protect you. You no longer have the lies to hide behind. You feel raw, vulnerable, desperate to cling to anything that will numb the sting. But if you can endure that rawness, if you can resist the urge to run back into old patterns, that's when transformation begins to take root. The soil has been torn apart, the ground has been broken, and now something new can grow. The irony is that years later, when you look back, you'll see that the death of your comfort was the most important moment of your life. You'll see that without it, you would have stayed asleep forever. You'll see that the person who killed, it wasn't your enemy, but your catalyst. They didn't come to make you happy. They came to make you alive. Comfort dies so transformation can live. It's cruel. It's unfair. It feels like loss, but it's the only way. And when someone enters your life who rips comfort from your hands, that's not punishment. That's the first breath of something real.